Hello everybody, my name is Brandon Messing. In this PowerPoint today, I'll be talking about international economics. I'll be using a current event to illustrate the key points of international economics. The current event I chose was the China-Japan conflict. This conflict is taking place because both countries want control over resource-rich islands that lay in the East China Sea between Japan and China. This conflict is very important to the U.S. in many ways, but, but especially the economic impact. We will look at this in a later slide. This map shows where these disputed islands lay. Japan and China both have different names for these islands. Japan calls them the Senkaku Islands, which the U.S. recognizes them as this name also, and China calls them the Diaoyu Islands. These islands are located 205 miles from China and 254 miles from Japan, so you can easily see why both countries want control over these islands. Now let's look at the economic importance of these countries. We will look at this in terms of importance to the United States. First, let's focus on China. China is America's biggest lender. China's holdings are also top in U.S. securities. China is also our most significant trade partner in the Asia Pacific region. Also, many U.S. companies outsource in China. An example of this would be Apple. Their phones are made in the United States, but they get assembled over in China. Now, Japan is an ally to the United States. First, Japan is home to the ships of the powerful U.S. 7th Fleet. Second, Japan is a large holder of the U.S. Treasuries. So both of these countries seem very important to the United States. So if war were to break out between these two countries, whose side would the United States go on? Now let's look at the economic damage that would happen if these two countries couldn't get along and had to go to war. First, both countries would suffer major damage. All foreign money would flee out of the countries, inflation hikes would be on the rise, and higher energy prices would happen. And this is just to name a few of the things that could possibly happen. If these two countries were to go to war, the economies of Europe would be almost as bad as China and Japan's. The conflict could lead to a global recession in which we will lose trillions of dollars on the global output. The financial market would be badly affected also. Stocks would move up and down rapidly, so there's plenty of damage that could happen if these two went to war. So now back to the question of who would the U.S. side with if a war were to break out? Would we side with our allies in Japan or with our economic partner in China? I believe the United States would have to side with our allies Japan. If we didn't support Japan, the U.S. credibility would be in question throughout this region. Even though China is our primary economic partner for the U.S., they are also viewed as a frenemy to us. Now, what is a frenemy? Frenemy is an economic partner, a rival, and a potential enemy. I thought that this picture clearly represents how the U.S. feels. They're watching these two countries, every move that's happening around these islands, and just hoping and praying that a war doesn't break out over these islands because of the impact and the pressure the United States could face. Okay, now let's look at the information we got in Module 6. First, let's look at the mercantilism and look at their viewpoint on this situation. This viewpoint This viewpoint of mercantilism believes a state must protect own interests at expenses of others. This system believes exports should outweigh the imports. So I believe the mercantilism view wouldn't want a war to take part between these two countries. Their system believes in a balance of trade, favorable distribution of wealth, and to create economic power state. None of these could be achieved if China and Japan went to war. The balance of trade would be all off. The distribution of money would also be off. So nobody could have power as an economic state because of all those being off if China and Japan went to war. Now, let's look at the economic liberalism and their viewpoints on the situation between China and Japan. This theory can be confusing and hard to understand for many, as it was for me. It believes in a free market system and runs on a supply and demand. It believes that the economy is organized on the individual lines. This means that economic decisions are made by individuals, not by organizations. It also opposes government regulation in the free market. So on this conflict between China and Japan, they also wouldn't want the war to happen because the free market would have restrictions placed upon it. They would also lose a demander for their goods, so their goods and services wouldn't be able to leave. Okay, now with this conflict, the comparative advantage would decline because trade would decline, so there wouldn't be as much wealth. No country is going to want to trade because they feel worried if China and Japan went to war. There's always drawbacks of trade, and this would be a great example. There's also little control over trade, and if a war broke out between China and Japan, the trade would decrease dramatically between all nations. So that's the reason why that there's always drawbacks to trades, and there's always little control over trade. Finally, we'll look at protectionism. Now, protectionism is needed for this exact reason. You need to be able to protect domestic industries from international competition. This is vital to having national security. There are different methods you can use for protectionism. The first would be through the use of tariffs. A tariff is a tax on goods coming in and out of your country. You could also put restrictions or regulations in place to protect your nation. So on this conflict, if a war was to happen, countries would place tariffs and have restrictions to goods and services to and from the countries of China and Japan. Alright, thank you for watching my presentation about international economic using the conflict that's going on between China and Japan. If you'd like to learn more about the situation, please click on the link below. Thank you.